There we go. Perfect.
Nice.
All right. Well, good
Okay.
afternoon, everyone. I'm James Poviwa, and this is the January 14th meeting of the Sustainable Economy Advisory Council. We do not have quorum, but we do want to note that council members in attendance include myself, Mayani Barudin, um, Joe Little. Am I missing anybody? Oh,
Patricia.
and also Patricia Knighton. So thank you all for being able to attend. We are recording this meeting so that it's available online, and we are going to go through our next agenda items, which include some updates uh, from Michael Ford, and the New Mexico Environment Department, and then the chair of the Sustainable Economy Task Force. So, in whatever order you all would like to proceed. Michael, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. And
Yeah. And I'll just make a
okay.
quick note that we're saving the intended agenda that we had for today until we can have quorum. So we're gonna just move a little bit less formally here for the folks that might watch this recording online. We've withheld some updates from our council members. We had high attrition on this meeting today in the afternoon, so a few of the folks that were supposed to present couldn't attend, and for that reason, we'd like to leave those updates from our council members for a future meeting. So I will turn it over to Michael with some updates from the Environment Department.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Do you know if you can enable screen sharing? It's saying
Yes, I will promote you to, let's see, co-host.
awesome. Sweet. Okay, great. So I just wanted to quickly share. I don't know if these slides are coming through okay. Four kind of slides I wanted to highlight in a quick Cliff's Notes version of what I'll present today. But we can start in the upper left here. I just want to give some background on the Clean Transportation Fuels Program. And the program, just for a bit of context, is a part of the governor's suite of climate goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in New Mexico. There is, in 2019, these efforts started with an executive order that was signed by the governor for to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 45% below 2005 levels by 2030. And those were strengthened by pledges New Mexico made under the U.S. Climate Alliance, which is an alliance of 24 U.S. states and territories that have pledged to move ambitiously on climate change, regardless of federal policy. And they represent well over half of U.S. population and GDP, so that our country continues to move forward on its climate pledges. And that strengthened the commitment from that 45% reduction of greenhouse gases throughout the whole economy below 2005 to a 50 to 52% reduction by 2030. And then 3/5 to 2/3 by 2035 and net zero emissions no later than 2050. That sounds super ambitious. Quick update though, how it's going. Our latest greenhouse gas inventory, and I'll link to these slides, which in turn link to that greenhouse gas inventory and forecast, show that we are on track with existing economic activity, fuel mix, and policies and regulations to get to a 29% reduction below those 2005 levels by the end of this year. So that's a big chunk of what we've got to do by 2030, and is actually faster than the US is committed to reducing its emissions under the Paris Agreement. And so this graph shows like the different economic sectors on the bottom here and where emissions reductions are happening. And I want to highlight these three sectors on the right-hand side are the three largest emitters: electricity generation, transportation, and oil and gas. And we have black bars for what we emitted in 2005, which is the base year for the governor's emissions reductions goals. Orange bars for 2021, which is the latest trued up year of observed data on our emissions. And then the projections through the end of this year are the light blue bars. And one thing you'll notice if you go all the way to the right is big drops in emissions from power generation. So our power plants and electricity, and big drops in emissions from the oil and gas sector, or sizable, not big enough, but it's a work in progress. You'll notice though that transportation is even more of a work in progress. It's been relatively flat. It's the one of the three, the big three emitters that's proven a little bit more intractable in terms of getting its emissions down. And so, in response, in last year's legislative session, House Bill 41 was passed. It's the Clean Transportation Fuels Standard, or CTFS. And that legislation we presented on, and I personally had the privilege of presenting to the IAD monthly call with tribal leaders in July of this past year, to the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions WIOA conference in August last year, and to the intertribal IRAC, the Intertribal Resource Advisory Committee, in September of last year, hosted by the 8 Northern Pueblo. That was all on the Clean Transportation Fuels Standard, or CTFS, and that committed actual emissions reductions in transportation, 20% by 2030, as shown by the first green dot on this slide in the upper right-hand corner, and 30% by 2040, as shown by the second green dot. How do we do that? We do that with something called the Clean Transportation Fuels Program, or CTFP. And so this is a new rulemaking that, as an executive agency, we do to support the CTFS. So CTFS, standard passed by the legislature; CTFP, the rules we have just made in our shop to support that legislation. And that's implements an annual curve, and it implements a market, because, just for clarification, the way that this works, the CTFS does not reduce emissions by limiting the amount of anything that people can consume or how much anybody can drive. It's a program that promotes consumer choice. And what it says is, if you make a fuel that is more emitting than a target emissions in something called carbon intensity, or like the carbon footprint of your fuel, then you have to help finance or subsidize credits, by purchasing credits, the production of fuels that are cleaner than each year's target carbon intensity. And those credits, I just want to make super clear, are not like carbon offsets purchased in other countries or anything like that. They are actual volumes of cleaner fuel that a producer of dirtier fuel has to pay for and has to be delivered to drivers in New Mexico. So it is a very hard and fast and focused policy that limits the amount of cost issues by having this credit market be competition among credit generating fuels. And I can talk about that a little bit more if it's of interest. Just to highlight two key benefits. One is good paying jobs. As this target becomes stricter in the upper right-hand slide, the fuels that get produced have to be cleaner and cleaner. And a lot of those fuels are going to require the construction of things like charging stations and fueling stations and other types of fuel supply equipment. And to do that, and part of the reason I presented about this at the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, or WIOA conference, hosted by the Department of Workforce Solutions, is because we need lots of trained electricians and utility line workers, project managers, engineers to build out fueling stations in our to get these cleaner credit generating fuels that we'll need more and more of as the target ramps up or gets stricter as time goes on. And other opportunities are out there as well to build different clean fuel facilities, whether it be something like cellulosic ethanol, renewable diesel, because like electricity and other very clean fuels are fuels that you need to get a whole new vehicle to use. Obviously, not everybody can do that. And we want to increase options for motorists that drive their existing vehicles. And so things like biodiesel, which can be a direct, or renewable diesel, which can be a direct replacement for fossil diesel in existing diesel powered trucks, for example, are certainly fuels known as drop-in fuels that are of interest. And whether or not facilities to supply those sort of drop-in fuels are built here in the state is kind of up for discussion. It depends on the economics of making it here versus where they're traditionally made, which is outside of New Mexico. What we do know is charging stations and fuel supply equipment has to be made here. And so we know for a fact that this program is going to drive a lot of jobs in support of our clean cars and clean trucks rule, which was separately passed last year to help drive the adoption of what are known as zero emissions vehicles, or ZEVs, in New Mexico. And we hope that that creates a lot of jobs and increases, as shown on this lower right slide, the provision of fuel infrastructure in places it isn't traditionally provided. So you can see in this lower right slide, big growth in EV fueling infrastructure, for example. And that has been accomplished with a lot of funding from NMDOT and from federal grants. In addition, though, we would also really like to focus on building out this infrastructure. If you notice the locations of fast chargers, which are
I believe we lost Michael.
Let's see. I'm sure he'll rejoin. In the meantime, Becky, I see you in the attendees room. I'm going to promote you to panelist. And hopefully we get Michael back soon.
Hi, I was able to rejoin.
Okay, great.
Great.
And did we also get Michael back?
I do not see him.
We did not yet. Do you want to continue and pick up where he had left off until I can get him back in here?
To be honest, I wasn't seeing his presentation and I don't have it pulled up. I'm very sorry. I apologize.
Okay, while we're waiting for Michael, Becky, would you feel comfortable just talking about the type of feedback that y'all are interested in for
Um,
your rule?
sure. And yeah, I also apologize because I had a meeting that ran over. So I'm not sure if Mike mentioned this, but we did release a discussion draft of the rule. And so that is open for public comment until the 17th, so a few days from now. But we are definitely looking for input on the rule, specifically anything related to, any economic benefits would be great. And I see Mike is back on.
We have Michael again.
sorry, did my computer crash out? I
I
think it must
guess.
have. I noticed I was like talking and like I wasn't hearing anything and I was like 3/4 of the way through and I was like, oh no.
And
Um,
also, I see that Marissa just joined. So, just for your knowledge to keep you in the loop, we didn't have quorum, but we're hearing from Michael and Becky at the Environment Department about clean fuels. And then I'll provide a brief update from EDD as well. And we're going to leave the presentations from council members until next time when we can have quorum.
And Michael, I think that you probably were gone for 2 or 3 minutes, if that helps you get back to place.
Okay. That does help. I um I don't know if you
Yeah,
guys want to let me share screen
I
again.
believe you were talking a lot about you know, uh, jobs and developing charging stations, manufacturing, etc.
Okay. That's not so bad. That's further along than I was afraid I had uh dropped off at. Do you know if you could make me a co-host again? Sorry. Oh.
You should be now. Try again.
Yeah, and I have links to the full slides and everything that I'm gonna put in the main chat too. But all right, let's see if this works and that my screen doesn't freeze.
Oh, Michael, Miney had a helpful comment. The last thing you mentioned
Hmm.
was incentivizing EVs.
Yes. Okay. Um, okay, yeah. So was I on this slide down here? I think I can tell by where my chicken scratch writing leaves off. Yeah, so we have a lot of workforce needs for building out EV stations. There's two types of fuels. There's fuels that go into specific vehicles. So like electricity is a fuel that goes into specifically electric vehicles. Obviously, to be able to use that, you've got to buy a new vehicle. Not everybody uh, has the money or the options to buy a new vehicle, and so in recognition of that, we also want to extend credit generating opportunities for fuels that are in it go into existing vehicles. So electricity is a vehicle specific fuel. It goes into what are known as ZEVs or zero emissions vehicles. And for those, we need lots of uh, folks to help build out charging stations, project managers and engineers, contracting and utility line workers, electricians, and mechanics. We have a really good relationship with Department of Workforce Solutions and have talked to the higher education department here in New Mexico as well, that have an adult education program and focus a lot on retraining and training folks to step in and take a lot of these jobs because we have a really big demand for electricians, line workers, mechanics, even like CDLs, like folks that can drive electric trucks, which is really hard to do. We've had the chance to if you've had the chance to go inside one, Goodwill has a model electric 18 wheeler that they had out at electric vehicle day at the State House at the Roundhouse last year, and it's pretty complicated. So long story short, we have to train a lot of people and are working with agencies to help get the workforce up to speed and meet their needs for what are needed for them to be able to go to training programs. But it's super important because those are the facilities that we absolutely have to build here in New Mexico. I mean, there's different like the drop-in fuels like biodiesel, renewable diesel, ethanol, that is largely made and refined in places outside of New Mexico. It's unclear what role, if any, New Mexico would play in supplying those fuels. What is clear is we definitely need EV chargers and EV stations here in the state. Can you guys still hear me or did I crash out again?
No, we hear you.
You're good.
Oh, thank goodness. I was worried because it looked like my screen froze. I was like, oh no, did it happen again? Um, but I just wanted like the last thing I wanted to show was just this map of charging ports where you have DC fast charging ports, which are also called level 3 or DCFC fast chargers, are denoted in this map by blue dots around the state of New Mexico. And their growth is shown by the blue line here. And level 2 ports, which are um, not residential chargers, but slow charging ports that are represented by the green line here. You can see they're both growing exponentially with a lot of funding from and that NMDOT has provided and that we have been able to tap into with the NEVI program and federal sources like that. And you can see a lot of the stations are kind of along the I-10, I-25, and I-40 corridors, which makes sense. NEVI is specifically focused on corridors, and those are the most heavily trafficked parts of the state. This policy, by design, provides credits for fuel supply equipment, but has limits on how many credits just for the equipment itself can go to each zip code, and is kind of put together to spread that construction of chargers to places that maybe are on paths less traveled, less densely populated areas, rural areas where you have a first mover problem of people going, I'd love to get an EV if only I had a charger, and charging companies going, I'd love to build a charger only if only some people had EVs. We can use this program to help solve that chicken or egg dilemma and get chargers out to fill in some of the gaps that you see on this map. So that was about all I had for slides. And I have some links in this doc that I'm going to drop in the chat to the full presentation. And we're taking public comment, importantly, through the end of this week. So I will share links to the public comment portal in the chat as well that folks can go to, and our website where they can learn a bit more about the rule, as well as you can also just ask me while I'm here and have an opportunity to get involved in this process. So that was all I had for now, but I'd
Yeah, and
love to
I
take
think
questions.
Becky has gone ahead and sent over those links, so thank you. And so yeah, open to questions from folks on the call.
And I think my screen is frozen. Did I drop off? Or
No,
can
you're
you guys
still
still hear me?
here. Yes, I
Okay.
think folks are just giving it some thought at the
Okay.
moment. Yeah, I think the other thing too is that a lot of council members are maybe interacting on this rule through their non-volunteer work, but their actual organizations. I know that NRDC is. And so I think we'll be commenting through the public portals and really appreciate the presentation. Um, yeah. Uh, any further thoughts from folks?
Michael, do you want to pop your email on that screen so that anyone who has a question can reach out, or do you prefer the public comment?
No, yeah, we could I could definitely do that. My screen is frozen for some reason, but like the audio is working. So I will need to log off and log back. I think I need to
We
like,
can we can still see you. Let me just remove your sharing permissions and then it should just go
oh,
back to normal.
okay. Yeah, my screen is like still frozen for some reason, but
I can post your email address, Mike, if you're okay with that.
yeah, go for it. Sorry folks. I don't know, my computer is tripping out right now. I uh will be I think I something is weird. My screen's just frozen. Anyways, I will hop off and hop right back on. Hopefully that solves the problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
And for anyone who wants to reach out, his email is michael.ford@env for environment.nm.gov.
Great. And that's in the chat as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, again, Michael, thank you for the presentation. And if there aren't any questions, folks can reach out to you via email.
Okay. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
please do reach out. I love talking, as you can tell, so don't don't feel shy. Feel free to engage. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay. Great.
So Kayla, I think we can pass it over to you for any updates you may have,
Sure thing.
if unless
I
I'm missing
wish,
something.
no, you're not. I wish I could Remove this now that we're not talking about it. Let's see. Hmm. Well, is everyone else still staring at clean fuels like I am?
Yeah, but we can,
Okay.
you know,
Okay. You'll be
moving
looking at clean fuels, but I'll be talking about things from EDD. So, since we don't have quorum, these are just some updates that I hope everyone on the advisory council and, oh, excellent. Everyone on the advisory council and task force side will appreciate, because I know we have a number of folks here from various agencies as well, and we really appreciate you joining an advisory council meeting. So thank you for being here. A couple of updates. One is that we have kicked off our year-long partnership with the Harvard Growth Lab. And for those of you that don't know the Harvard Growth Lab, they are one of the leading outfits in the world for researching economic diversification, which our state very desperately needs, and building economic complexity in different settings. The really cool part is that to this point, the vast majority of their work has been international, with countries around the world. So after Wyoming, we are only the second US state to get access to the dedicated tools and resources of the Growth Lab. So that's really exciting. And they will be assisting us with research to diversify the New Mexico economy. So they have lots of great quantitative tools and a whole wonderful staff and group of faculty, as well as other researchers and policy fellows, one of whom is named Juan Carlos. He was with us for a summer fellowship through the Harvard Taubman Center for State and Local Government, and now he's going to be with us for the next year through a grant that we got through a new initiative called Resilient Energy Economies. So we will be looking at diversifying the New Mexico economy beyond not just extractive industries, but also public sector work, because as I'm sure a lot of you know, extractive industries dominate state revenues, but public sector work dominates jobs in New Mexico. It's somewhere around a quarter of jobs in the state, as compared to the national average, which is somewhere around 14%. So it's a lot higher, and we definitely need a more diversified economy to create more jobs with high rates of occupational safety and health, and to create jobs that are well paid, sustainable, with good conditions for workers, as well as stable revenue from other industries. So we're really excited to have that partnership. It's already underway. We've completed some historical analysis of the New Mexico economy to better understand some of the barriers to building more diversified industry mix in the past, and then we'll be looking forward. And along those lines, we also have recently launched an RFP on pursuing competitive advantage in advanced energy and so-called clean tech. And so what that would mean is that across the clean energy supply chain, as you all know, there's a lot of different areas that are incentivized through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act. Tons of opportunities in renewable energy and things such as manufacturing, not just for New Mexico, but across the country. But it can be difficult to know what you're good at, depending upon the skills and assets that you might already have. So the point of that RFP is to examine, given all the different things that we could branch into, what is the state best position to pursue that would make us competitive, not just regionally, but nationally and globally. So looking into things like geothermal energy generation, and other sorts of clean energy, clean tech stuff. So we're really excited about that RFP. It is going to, I believe, inform some of the analysis that will be taking place through the Climate Change Task Force, which I'm sure a lot of you know was relaunched, and they're going to be restarting a lot of their sector-specific teams that will be looking at plans for decarbonization across the New Mexico economy, also considering the governor's recent executive order on clean energy workforce. So we are all working on that together. And then they're also producing an updated emissions inventory as well. So we're really excited to be working with other agencies like MNERD and Environment Department on the climate action plan and to inform various initiatives in other departments with the results of the RFP that we've commissioned. And going back to the Harvard Growth Lab tools and frameworks, we just had a great call this morning with counterparts from early childhood, from DWS, a couple of other New Mexico state government friends, along with colleagues from Wyoming who have worked with the Growth Lab in the past. So you might think that that sort of analysis would only look directly at things like attracting projects or growing certain industries, but the Growth Labs project in Wyoming identified things like childcare as a barrier to getting their workforce more involved and combating their low rate of labor force participation. So I can assure you that it's a very holistic kind of economy-wide look at New Mexico. And we're not just thinking about jobs and revenue, we're also thinking about, standard of living and all sorts of different things that are super critical. So we're excited about that. And my point there is that it will involve agencies beyond just MNERD and environment. We're going to really need our colleagues in higher education and workforce solutions, and we're really excited to work with you. As far as the state plan for this fiscal year, we're excited that it should hopefully be launching this week. So you all can expect that document soon, and we're excited to get to work on implementation for that. We have really appreciated your feedback, and we're looking forward to, like I said, getting to work, but also beginning to think about the next iteration, what those action items will be once we move forward on these. And I think that's probably it from me. Just reach out if you have any questions. Like I said, the Growth Lab is our very close partner for the next year. So anything that you might be interested in researching, we can definitely connect on that. I know that Mr. Little, for example, had brought up interest in a review of research and literature on tribal economic development. And so that's something where, the Growth Lab does have summer internships and things like that. If you have a particular topic of interest, it's possible that we can build it into this partnership. So think of entities that might want to host interns. This is going to be all hands in kind of very collaborative effort. So we are excited to make those resources available to you.
Excellent. That's really amazing work. Thank you and your team for all the hard effort to, further resource all of this work. And I'm very excited. So really looking forward to that. I'm also very excited to see the plan. So looking forward to seeing that this week. Do folks have any questions for Kayla? Okay, will the updated plan be presented to the legislature?
Yes. And we also have briefed the legislature a couple of times on the plan very recently. So we did provide kind of a general outline of that document and some of its key initiatives. We spoke with the Revenue Stabilization and Tax Policy Committee on, I believe, the 16th or 17th of December. And then way back in September, we also did speak with the LFC about that. So they're very familiar, and it seems like there's a good amount of interest in that updated document.
Could you maybe talk a little bit through potential internship supports through Growth Lab?
I see another question from Anna, and I just want to make sure that I address it. So, yes, we have presented to committees. If the question is whether I specifically will be, then I don't believe so, but I've been prepping all the presentations along with our team here. So, yeah. Oh, and in the future, I would definitely be happy to. We don't have anything planned during the actual session. We did a lot of that during interims. Yeah, and James, what were you going to say?
Oh, just Kayla, if you maybe could expand a little bit on potential support for internship programs through Growth Lab, excuse me.
Yes. So the Growth Lab does have summer internships. We will have to finalize details for a lot of that fairly soon. The idea with that is to target organizations that might need added capacity and places where I may not personally have a regional presence, but we want to build relationships in this project. And so I'm thinking a lot about having, and have had some conversations with folks about having someone up in the Northwest, to think about the impacts of the coal plant and generating station closures. We're looking at hopefully having someone in the Permian, and we're open to other possibilities as well. So if there was an organization, whether that's a tribal government or APCG or a COG or a municipality, anything that you think is really directly related to the work of this council as far as diversifying the New Mexico economy that would bring a different angle we might be missing, please do let us know.
Excellent. So, folks, please do reach out to um, Kayla with any ideas.
Yeah. And it could be a nonprofit too. I don't want to exclude that. We would just have to make sure that it's a good fit. And so it is fully funded by the Growth Lab. And basically, the organization would need to provide a desk for that individual. And then that intern would likely be a graduate researcher, I believe, and they would be enrolled in a program where they're receiving training in a lot of the Growth Lab's tools and methodologies for thinking about diversifying economies, but with the caveat that they would definitely have a faculty member and a staff researcher to kind of help them along in their project. So it is a student intern, but also a very experienced Growth Lab faculty and staff that have been doing this work for several decades.
Excellent. Great. Any other questions from people on the call?
And I guess while I'm at it, I'll just mention that if anyone has friends or colleagues in the graduate programs at UNM, we're excited that our other fellowship in partnership with University of New Mexico will be hopefully hiring someone around May. So please just share that with your qualified and passionate friends and colleagues.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's the most of the updates. I don't think that we have anything else. Thanks everybody who was able to attend, and we will be in touch on scheduling a SEAC meeting in February.
Yeah.
So with that, we can go ahead and close out the call. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And we can go ahead and stop the recording now.